Hello all, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today's video we are going to see how we can secure our AKS cluster using AKS Backup. So basically it helps us to prevent any kind of unexpected event like any kind of disaster or accidental data loss or maybe any kind of human error. So we can secure our AKS cluster with the help of AKS Backup. We will also see in a live demo how we will configure AKS backup for AKS cluster. So before moving to the AKS backup, first we will understand what is Azure backup, because AKS backup is based on the Azure backup only. So Azure backup is a cloud-based backup solution provided by Microsoft Azure that allow you to protect and restore your data across Azure services and on-premise system as well. So basically Azure Backup is a cloud services like other service like we create a virtual machine storage account. So similarly we have a service called Azure Backup which we use to protect our data from any kind of accidental data loss or any kind of disaster. So it is designed to simplify the backup process while ensuring security, scalability and compliance with industry standard. So there are few key features of Azure Backup. The first one is comprehensive coverage. So basically it covers a lot of services of Azure where you can utilize this service called Azure Backup. Either it is your Azure virtual machine, your database, or your AKS or any kind of on-premise workload. All these things you can secure with the help of Azure Backup. The second important feature is automated backup. So basically with the help of backup, with the help of policies, you can schedule the backup like in a day at between every 4 hours you want to take a backup of your AKS cluster or any other Azure services or resources, or in a day once you want to take a backup. So those kind of schedules you can enable or implement in Azure Backup. Third one is incremental backup. That is very important one, because since the changes since the last backup, reducing storage requirement cost. What does it mean? Basically you have taken a backup 4 hours back. Now the after 4 hours whatever the changes happen in your files or in your resources, this will take only that particular data backup, because it will not take the complete backup again. It is the incremental backup. So what are the latest changes it will see, those changes will be backed up by this Azure Backup. This is called an incremental backup. This help us to reduce the cost of your storage, and obviously if your storage account will have less GB of size, then definitely the cost also will be reduced. So I hope it's clear what is Azure Backup. Now we'll come to the AKS Backup part. So again, AKS Backup is a cloud native service based on Azure Backup and Valero. So AKS Backup, when we enable a AKS Backup in a backend, basically this particular service use Azure Backup and Valero. This is the third party tool which enable us to implement backup for AKS cluster. It let you schedule backups for Kubernetes resources like persisting volume claims. You can choose exactly what to backup, such as a specific namespace or the entire cluster. So you have to keep in mind when we talk about the AKS backup, basically it is not something it take a backup of your complete AKS cluster, but it take a backup of your the workload which is running on your AKS cluster. So suppose you have 4 namespace, you have the capabilities or ability to choose, okay, you want to backup only 2 namespace and you don't want to backup another 2 namespace. That also you have the option, you can choose what you want to take a backup while you are configuring the AKS Backup. AKS Backup works by using the backup extension installed within the AKS cluster. So when we want to enable AKS Backup for our AKS cluster, we have to install the backup extension. That this particular thing we will see when we do a live demo. The purpose of backup extension installed in the AKS cluster is to enable backup and restore capabilities for containerized workload and persisting volume used by workload running in the AKS. So basically this particular extensions play a major role in AKS backup, because as soon as you install the backup extension in your AKS cluster, you will see a lot of backend resources like uh, pods or multiple services basically installed in a backend, which basically help us to configure the capabilities of AKS backup, uh, AKS workload for your particular cluster. So the actual backup data is stored in storage account in Azure Blob container or in a snapshot. So when you configure the AKS backup, you should also have a storage account, because the backup files which basically this backup extension will take, that those files basically is going to store in your storage account under the blob container. So this part will be more clear when we do a live demo. Now we will see our backup strategies in AKS. So there are two main approaches for AKS backup. The very first one is Azure native tools, which is Azure backup again. So again, it's a built-in solution for AKS cluster, and it seamlessly integrate with your Azure resources. And if you are using Azure, if your entire workload is running on Azure, then I would suggest you should use Azure backup uh, as a backup strategy for your AKS cluster. And another one, we have a third party tool like Valero. This is also widely used for Kubernetes backup. So as we discussed earlier, when we configure the Azure backup in a backend, you will see also some ports for Valero and extension also. But when we enable this backup strategy, we will also see what all the ports we get after enabling this particular extension. So which ones should you use? If you are already, as I told you, if you are already invested in Azure ecosystem, then Azure backup is a great choice. For multi-cloud environment or advanced customized, Valero might be a better fit for your scenario. Now we will see how does basically AKS backup work. So you can see a lot of components. So let me quickly understand this particular architecture. So suppose we have a cluster app cluster, AKS cluster 1. So this is the cluster which we have configured, and you can see in this particular cluster I have two namespaces. The first namespace is app1-ns and the second namespace is app2-ns. So these are the two namespaces as part of this particular AKS cluster. Now you can see in app1 hyphen namespace we have deployment, services and ingress. So those pods are deployed as part of the app1 namespace. Now in app2 namespace again we have a pods, persisting volume claim. So those are pods are running as part of your app2 namespace, and these persisting volume are mounted with Azure disk. So now you can see the backup extension. This basically we have to configure for our AKS cluster. So what happened? When you configure the backup extension, basically it will configure or it will integrate with the Azure storage account, and with the help of Azure backup vault and backup policy, you configure the backup for your AKS cluster. So what is happening in this particular diagram? So these two namespaces we have as part of AKS cluster, and we have configured the backup from on this AKS cluster 1. Now we have again another AKS cluster which is AKS cluster 2. Now you can see in this AKS cluster 2 we have only one namespace, which is app2-namespace. This is the one basically. So what we want to basically take a backup of this particular namespace, and we don't want to take a backup of this particular namespace. So in the case of any event like accidental data loss or any kind of disaster, this particular namespace will be backed up in the storage account. So we can directly restore this particular namespace or a future namespace as well in this particular AKS cluster. And again, for that, when you create a AKS cluster 2 for restoration, again you have to install a backup extension, and you have to integrate this AKS cluster with the storage account as well. That's what we will get all the files, because when we configure the backup for AKS cluster 1, all the files will be stored in Azure storage account under the blob container. So this particular AKS cluster manage identities, whatever the authorization mechanism you have used in your AKS cluster, that should have permission through this storage account, so you can retrieve the file when you do a restore. So I hope it's clear, and it will be more clear when we are do a demo. So this is the explanation which I have already discussed as part of this particular architecture. So same thing I have explained here, so I'm not going to explain again all these things. If you want to see, you can pause the video on this particular duration and you can read the complete lines. This is not obviously it's not a complete one, but the major part I have already mentioned here. Now there are steps to configure AKS backup. The very first thing, we should have a resource group in Azure. Second one, we should have storage account. Then under storage account we should have blob container. Then we will create a AKS cluster, and then we have to deploy some workload on AKS cluster so we can configure the backup. So another next thing, we have to install the backup extension, and then we will create the vault and configure the policies and backup for our AKS cluster. So let's move to the Azure portal and we will see how we need to configure all these things. So let me go to my Azure portal. So the very first thing what I will do, I'll create a resource group and I'll rename it as AKS Backup Resource Group. Sorry, AKS Backup Resource Group, and location I will choose Central India. So resource group is created. So now next thing, we have to create a storage account. So let me search here storage account. So I will choose here my resource group which we have created, AKS Backup RG, and the storage account name, let me put AKS storage account. Okay, so let me put some numbers. Okay, so these fields can contain only lowercase letters and numbers. Okay, so AKS storage 1 2 3 something. Okay, so the region, the Central India, and primary services we want Azure blob storage only, and I will choose standard only. Redundancy I'll choose LRS, locally redundant storage. So this basically, as per your requirement, you can choose like this particular storage account, what all the redundancy you want to choose. If you want journal label, you can use ZRS. If you want geographical label, then you can use GRS, but this is for a demo purpose, so I'm going to use LRS only. Now here let me see what all the option is required. Okay, nothing is required, so I leave everything is default. Data protection, I'll leave it everything default. Encryption also I leave it default. So let me hit on review and create. So this is a very minimal configuration I have done for this storage account. Once the storage account is created, then we have to create a container. So this is going to take a couple of minutes, so I will pause the video. Once it's done, I will resume back. Okay, so storage account has been created successfully. Let me go to resources and I'll go to data storage and containers. So here I will create a container called AKS Backup, and let me click on create. Okay, so the next thing what we have to do, let me go to my slides. Okay, now we will create a AKS cluster. So let me go to Kubernetes services. So this is also a very basic AKS cluster I will create here. Cluster name, let me put AKS demo 121 something. Okay, rest all the fields I will leave default. Now in node pool also, okay, we have to change the SKU size here. So let me update it. So I'll choose the first one, and the node count also, we don't want these many nodes, so I'll put 1 and maximum 2. Let me click on update. Networking, let me choose Kubernetes basic default one, and I don't want any network policies. Okay, this one also integration, I will leave it default. I don't want any monitoring, and the alert tool as well, so I will uncheck this one. And in terms of security, I leave it default. Okay, now I will hit preview and create. So it's basically validation, the configuration which we have configured. Once the validation is passed, okay, so it's passed, let me hit on create. So now this AKS cluster creation will take again couple of minutes, so I will pause the video. Once the deployment will be completed, I will resume back. So now AKS deployment is completed, so let me go to resources. Okay, now let me connect to this AKS cluster from my local system. So let me open the Visual Studio Code. So I'll go to okay, let me open a new terminal here. So now what we will do, I'll go to here connect option, and I'll choose this Azure CLI. So let me run AZ login command first, because we have to do the authorization. Okay, so I'm successfully authorized. Let me go back to my Visual Studio Code here. Okay, so you can see we got the detail of subscription and all. So let me clear the screen. Now the next command is we have to download the cluster credentials, so we can connect it. So let me again copy the command and run it. Okay, so if I run kubectl get pods, we can see no resource found in the default namespace. If I'll give here -a, sorry, okay, let me quickly check the command. What was the command to get all the pods? Just give me a moment. Okay, so the command is, let me clear the screen, kubectl get pods -all space sorry hyphen namespace. Okay, so it's -all hyphen namespace. Okay, something is wrong. So let me get kubectl get namespaces. doesn't have resource type namespaces. Okay. Okay, so I was misspelling here the namespace here. You can see we have one, two, three, four namespaces here: default, cube node, cube node hyphen lease, cube public, and cube systems. Let me check the pod one more time. kubectl. Okay, so something I'm doing wrong here. Just give me a moment. Okay, so actually I was putting a space after hyphen hyphen all. It is without a space. So now you can see we have these many pods are running as part of these namespaces. So now what we want to do, we want to create some low workload on this AKS cluster. So this is the simple deployment.ml file. If you can see, the first thing we are going to create here: deployment, nginx, simple nginx deployment, and 3 replicas here. And another thing, we are going to create a services load balancer services. So these two pod we will see when we run this particular demo.ml file. So let me run it. kubectl apply -force. The file name is demo.ml. Okay, so you can see deployment.apps created. Okay, let me quickly verify the pod. kubectl get pods. You can see the 3 replicas of nginx deployment is running here. Because we have specified 3 replicas. Now let me check the services. So kubectl get sbc, sorry, sbcs. So we got the cluster services as well. So these are the workload which is running as part of our this particular AKS cluster. So if I'll quickly browse this IP address, let's see if we are getting anything. Ideally we would see the home page of nginx. So welcome to the nginx. So it means this workload which we have deployed, it is running successfully. Now next what we have to do now, so as we quickly, let me clear it. So now when we enable the backup extension, we will see a lot of other resources as well. So if I'll so you can see these are the namespaces we have by default. Now let me quickly go to the Azure portal and enable the backup extension. So if I'll go to under setting tab, you can see the backups. So here we have to click on install extension. So these are the prerequisite which we should have. So let me click on next, and you can see here we have to link our storage account here. So we have already created with the storage account name is AKS storage 212 and the container name is AKS backup. So if I'll go back to my storage account, let me quickly go. We should have a blank container. Now if I'll go to my storage account, if I'll go to containers, data storage containers, so we don't have anything as part of this container. So now let me quickly run it. Click create. So this installation of AKS backup extension will take couple of minutes. So meantime I'll pause the video. So now we can see a backup extension is installed successfully because we get option here to delete the extension. Now let me quickly go to my Visual Studio Code. So here we will see a namespaces. If we get any extra namespaces for this particular extension. So let me run kubectl get namespaces. So now you can see the another namespace is created called data protection -Microsoft. So this namespaces is created when we enabled a backup extension. If we will see the pods also, kubectl get pods -a, So you can see a lot of pod in the three pods you can see under data protection hyphen Microsoft namespaces, and few or all the default one. You can see something called connectivity agent. So these are the few extra pods created as part of the backup extension. Now what we will do, we will configure the backup from here. Let me click on configure backup, and I don't have any vault here, so let me quickly create a new vault. So I'll provide the name here is AKS vault, and backup storage redundancy I will choose locally redundant. Let me click on next vault policies. So I don't want any soft delete, because what does it mean basically? If you delete the, or if you delete or accidentally your data got deleted, it will not delete permanently. It will still available in a Azure. So you can retrieve that data within the retention period whatever you have mentioned here. So I don't want this particular thing, so let me uncheck this one. And cross subscription is also fine. Tags I don't want, so let me click on review and create. So here basically we're creating the vault for our backup. So again this will take couple of minutes to create a backup vault. So I'll pause the video. Once it's completed, I'll assume okay, it's completed too quickly. So you can see we got some error here. Trusted access or role permission are missing for the selected cluster. So we will click here cluster permission, sorry, grant permission. So it will automatically grant all the permission which is missing and which is required as part of this configuration of backup. You can see it's assigning the role assignment is happening, and the time also you can see seconds is running here. So basically here you can see it's revalidating all these things which we have configured. So what all the roles or permission is missing, it will automatically assign those roles for this as part of this AKS cluster. Okay, so it is going to take a couple of minutes. So let me pause the video. Once this revalidation will be successful, I resume back. So now you can see the revalidation is completed successfully. If I'll go to notifications, you can see here all permissions granted successfully. Now let me click on next. Let me close this. So now here we have to choose the backup policy. So we don't have any backup policy. So let me create a new backup policy from here. Let me give name here AKS Backup Policy. Next we will see the schedule plus retention. You can see the backup frequency hourly if you want. So every 4 hours, every 6 hours, every 8 hours, every 12 hours. Based on your requirement, you choose the backup frequency here on a daily basis or on an hourly basis. If you want a daily basis, you can choose particular time slot and the time zone. So it's completely up to you how you want to configure a backup frequency for your AKS cluster. So here I will choose every 4 hours, and you can see the retention rules default is 7 days. So how many days you want to keep this particular backup, so this is the default one. If you want to add new retention rule, you can add it from here. Backup taken every day or backup taken every week, all those retention rule basically you can configure here. So I'm going for a default one. So let me click on next and create. So this backup policies again will take couple of minutes. So I'll pause the video. Okay, it's completed successfully too quickly. So this is the backup policy which we have created. and this is the default retention policies. Let me click on next. Now we need to create a data source. So I'll click here add or edit, and so here basically you have to select the resources which you want to take a backup. So you can see here, select namespaces to the backup, all including future namespaces, or choose from the list. So you can see we are getting a default, or because we have only one namespaces default here. If you want additional resources, you can choose from here. If you have any secrets in your AKS cluster, then you have to check include secrets as well, but I don't have any secret. It's a simple deployment of nginx, so I'm not choosing this. But if you have, you can select all these options here. So give me a name here, backup instance name, AKS backup 121, and let me click select, and let me click on validate. So basically it will, okay, so for database with role assignment not done error, so these are the errors we got. So let me click on here, assign missing roles. You can see it's starting assigning the role what was the missing as part of this configuration. So if you want to, okay, it's going on. If you want to see the complete error, like what all the roles or missing, you can see the complete details from here as well. So again, it will take a couple of minutes. Okay, it's completed too quickly. Now deployment succeeded. It's revalidating. Let me show the details. So you can see error code, message, recommendation, all these things, all this detail you will get it from here. So it's validating all the roles which is assigned by automatically from the AKS, sorry, this backup. Let's wait 11 seconds more to get this validation completed. So it is going to take couple of minutes, I think. So I'll pause the video, otherwise unnecessary the video length will be too much. Okay, so now it's completed. You can see the role assignment completed. Now let me click on next, and let me click on configure backup. So this will take again couple of minutes. I'll pause the video. Once the deployment will be completed, I'll resume back. Okay, so now the deployment is succeeded. Now you can see the AKS cluster here. The protection status is protection configured. Now what we will do, I'll go to here. Now you have an option called backup now, because we have configured this particular AKS cluster backup for every 4 hours. But if you want on demand backup or manually, you can simply click on backup now. This is the one option. Now let me go to the backup center here. And from here let me choose data source type AKS. So you can see the protection status is one item and protected in primary region only, because we have configured local. So now what we will do, let me click on here, and this is the protected item. So let me go to the, okay, it's come back to the AKS cluster only. Let me go back to the backup again. So now what we will do, we will click on demand backup. So I will choose here backup now and backup now. So earlier we don't have any content or backup files in this particular container. Now once this backup will be completed, we will see a lot of content here, what it is basically taken a backup for us. So let me refresh it. So you can see the in progress on demand backup. The one is the status which is running, and you can see the backup triggered successfully. Let me refresh the container here. Okay, so I don't see any data here. Let's wait for couple of minutes again. Because we are still seeing the in progress one. So you can see the status is in progress. That's what we are not able to see any content in the blob container. Let me go back here. Let's wait the status. Once the status will be completed, then we will see the backup files in the blob container. You can see all the duration is also running. So I'll pause the video. Once this status will be completed, I'll resume back. Okay, so now we can see the backup status is completed now. So I'll go back to my storage account. So now you can see under the blob container, we got a folder called backups, and if I open this particular folder, you can see a lot of JSON files where basically it's taken the backup of our AKS cluster, because we will having only one namespace which was default. If you have multiple namespaces, you have the capability to choose what all the namespaces you want to choose for the backup. So it means the backup is succeeded successfully. Now in the case of any disaster or any kind of failure, now you want to restore this backup to the another cluster. Now let me quickly tell you what you have to do. So again, you have to create a AKS cluster name, like for example AKS cluster 2, and there you have to again install the backup extension, and you have to link the storage account, and you have to go back to the backup center here. If you can see, let me go to the data protection item. So if I'll go back to this particular protection where it is configured, so here you have an option called restore. So if you want to restore this particular backup to the another AKS cluster, then what you have to do, you have to simply go to restore, and you have to select the restore point. So as of now we only have one restore point, so you have to select the restore point and go to restore parameters. So here you have to select target cluster. So we only have one AKS cluster, which is the primary one. If you have a second AKS cluster where you want to restore this particular backup, you can click a change Kubernetes services, and you can just select that particular cluster where you want to restore this particular backup, and you just simply follow the review and restore, and it will restore this particular backup in your new cluster. And you can simply run this nginx deployment application without any kind of deployment, because we have already deployed the nginx in cluster 1, and as soon as you restore the backup, you will see the nginx services running on AKS cluster 2 as well. So I hope it's clear. In case if you have any doubt, please ping me on comment. I'll definitely try to reply as soon as possible. So that's all for today. See you next video. Thank you so much.